Hi, and welcome back to the History Makers Leadership Podcast. My name is Daniel, and I'm incredibly excited to be joined by my pastor and dear friend, Tommy Adams. Tommy, it's great to have you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Tommy, we love to sit down with Christian leaders and think through things, talk through things, so that we can be faithful to live out our calling and our identity in Christ in our life, in our leadership. So would you mind just sharing a little bit of your background, some of your story with us so we kind of know where you're coming from?
Yeah, so I didn't grow up in church. I grew up in a very broken environment. I grew up in a broken home. My parents were divorced when I was 5 years old. I moved away from my dad at 5, and that was kind of painful and traumatic. And then saw brokenness in my family. I have a history of addiction in my family. Alcoholism runs deep in my family, and it touched me when I was a teenager even. And then brokenness due to abuse. Been in some very abusive environments. And so I did not grow up in church. I grew up knowing very little about God, about Jesus. I knew nothing about the Bible and about church. And so, at 19 years old, ended up going to a Methodist university in North Georgia, and didn't even want to be there. It's the only school that accepted me, which tells you a little bit about my intelligence. But anyways, met a group of students there who really loved the Lord and just spent a lot of time with me, loving me, and in spite of who I was, in spite of my background, shared the gospel with me constantly. I met the campus pastor there. His name was Tim Harrison. He really invested in me as well and took the time to share the love of Jesus with me. And at 19 years old, I gave my life to Jesus. And it wasn't long after that I felt the call to ministry. As a matter of fact, when I first gave my life to Christ, I didn't know there was a difference. I thought everybody who was saved was in the ministry.
Right.
And so every time they asked me to stand up and share or pray or do whatever, even if I didn't know what I was doing, I said yes.
Yeah.
I just gave, Jesus my unconditional yes. And I remember that campus pastor inviting me to go on my first mission trip to Mexico to help build the foundations of a church. And he said that they would figure out the money portion of it. I just needed to go. And so I went down, and I remember the day it happened. I was standing in a ditch digging the footings for a foundation when I heard the voice of God for the very first time in my life. It wasn't audible, but I knew it was God speaking to me. And basically he said, "This is the life that I've called you to." And I was sure he was calling me to dig ditches for the rest of my life. Like, I didn't know what that meant, but
Right.
I gave him my unconditional yes. And then shortly after that, I started serving in youth ministry. I was teaching confirmation classes in a Methodist church, and I had not been confirmed in a Methodist church myself. And I was, shortly after that, called to be an interim youth pastor and then a youth pastor, and then was ordained as a pastor not long after that. It was probably happened faster than I would have liked it, but God had a purpose and a plan.
Yeah.
I hadn't gone to seminary at that point. I was still a new believer, and I was an ordained pastor.
Wow.
So that was the path that God has had me on ever since. Is I learned by doing.
Yeah.
And I remember the first church that I was a full-time staff in. After 6 months of being on staff, the entire staff either was fired or quit or whatever.
Wow.
And I was the only staff pastor as a brand new believer, ordained pastor. People were coming to me about marriage issues, and I'd only been married for like a couple of months at that point. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out myself.
Yeah.
So it was a unique path that God had me on, in that I didn't go the traditional, grew up in church, went to school, learned these things, and then was put in this. It really was trial by fire, my entire ministry.
Well, I think there's something in there. There are lots of leaders who go through, kind of that season where all of a sudden they're saying yes, and they find themselves in that position where they go, I don't know if I'm really ready for this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I'm equipped for this. I don't know if I'm able or ready to handle that. How did you kind of adapt to that in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard. As a man and as human being, we see our deficiencies. And so I never felt like, oh man, I'm just not, I'll tell my wife that even now.
Yeah.
I'm just not good at this. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And, but time and time again, I've had people come up to me, maybe after I speak or whatever, and they would say the same thing. Like, I think God uses that weakness in you to display his strength.
That's right.
And so I think there was as much as I lament it sometimes, my journey, I think there was a very specific reason why God would put me in those environments. It wasn't because I was the best speaker or teacher or I knew a lot or I was funny or whatever. It was because I was really a blank canvas that he could display his strength through. And so, when Paul talks about, his grace is sufficient for me, his strength is made perfect in my weakness, I'm living proof of that.
Right.
Is that it's never me. I'm still that scared new believer every time I step into a pulpit or whatever, or behind, a camera or whatever. I'm still that nervous. Like, I hope I don't say stupid things and do stupid things.
I mean, gosh, that's definitely comforting for me, because I get that, right? Like I feel those same things. Obviously we attend church together, and we're in alignment and agreement on all of those things.
But we kind of attend church together.
I mean, we're for those who are curious, Tommy leads a group of house churches in the United States that run across a portion of the state of Georgia, and so he leads one of those house churches, and so do I, and that keeps me really grounded and connected to that process of making disciples. As you shared your story, the thought that came to my mind was you were digging a foundation, you were digging footings for something to be built upon. And I think even now in this model of church that we've been living in some ways it's a similar thing where it's digging a footing, but this one feels well worn and kind of dug out by the Lord, really, to me. So tell me a little bit of, we believe deeply that leaders will have a passion for the harvest, right? And that means a passion for the Great Commission.
Right.
You know that the Great Commission talks about, making disciples, right? Going to all the nations, right? But there's this phrase, teaching them to obey, right?
Yeah.
And that's really kind of that discipleship context. What are you seeing, or how are you seeing discipleship, at the very least in the American church, but maybe even more broadly? Where are you seeing some of the trends or tides in that, in your walk in church?
Yeah, the interesting part of my journey is I didn't really have that one person to walk alongside me to teach me how to do things. And I can lament it, but I think it really was God's intention for it to be that way, because he's given me a passion to help see people grow in their relationship with the Lord. And so, just like everyone else, I came through the church, did the church thing, the youth pastor thing in a more traditional setting and all of that. And I always felt like there was something broken, like there's something messed up here, because what I'm reading about, especially in the book of Acts with the early church, and what I'm seeing happen and play out in the church is not, it doesn't jive, it doesn't go together. And there's some good things about, I had some great experiences in some churches, and I had some not so great experiences in some churches, but altogether, when I look at it, I was like, there's something that's not gelling with what I'm reading in Scripture. And maybe that was where it was good that I didn't come at it with a lot of background and baggage, because I could notice there's a difference. And so something inside of me always longed for more. Like I would read Acts chapter 2, Acts chapter 4, and I would be like, man, there's things missing, and I want to be a part of that so bad. But there was part of me also that would just resign myself to be like, well, these people are a lot smarter than me, and they've been doing this a lot longer than me, and this is hundreds of years of church history, and I just got to fall in line and do what I'm supposed to do. But there reached like a breaking point in my life where it's like, no, there's something fundamentally wrong, and I don't think I can continue to do church this way. And it was the discipleship piece. I think in our country, here in the United States, we've the church has become just this big attractional, consumeristic driven thing, where people, they go and they can attend, they can sneak in and sneak out. And as we were talking about before, they're never really known by anyone. You can attend church and never be known.
Right.
Or you can even go to a small group and never be known. And so we've made everything so programmatic and not relational. So in our church, kind of, I guess, our mission statement or whatever, if you want to call it that. We don't really call it that. But the truth is that discipleship happens best in the context of deep relationships.
Yeah.
And I came to that conclusion. It's not anything new. It's just reading Scripture and watching how Jesus invested in the 12.
Right.
He spent his time with them. They walked where he walked. He showed them the things of God, and then he let them do it. And so it was very relational. This wasn't just him standing in front of a church or a classroom teaching. This was him investing in I really want to know Simon Peter. I
Right,
really
right.
want to know John, and these relationships. And we see even in the picture of the Last Supper when John's reclining on Jesus, that's a very intimate
Mhm.
picture. And I think that's what discipleship looks like. And the problem is we've so programmed our churches to where relationship isn't a priority
Mhm.
anymore. You can literally just go home and say that, and I think that there was something in me. It's like, no, there has to be more than that.
Yeah, I would think even the opposite side of that can also be true, where I participate in all of the programs of the church, but maybe I don't have any personal
Yeah.
relationship in the midst of that.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of danger and propensity toward that. And I would argue that's probably not purely an American thing, right? There are
Right.
lots of groups, even in the global South now, they'll hold crusades and prayer
Yeah.
gatherings. I mean, I was at a church in Africa, and one of the elders was up there even saying, "We'll all give an at the prayer, but then we
Yeah.
walk out and we don't do anything."
Yeah.
Right. And there's that disconnect where it has become, I think at different times, very consumer in mindset or
Yeah. And
origin.
I think those things, the aspects of church, the Bible studies and the preaching and all that, and even the revivals and the conference, they're not inherently bad things, but I think they're missing an important element.
Yeah.
And so when it came down to it for our church, it was now we can add something else that we can call relational and to just be another relational program
Right.
in our church and try to get people involved, or we can force everybody into relationships. Because here's the thing, if we talk about like any socialization we have at church or conversation you have at church, traditional church setting, it's what, 5 minutes before, 5 minutes after.
Right.
Nothing deep happens in
Right.
5 minutes.
Right.
Like, so you're not talking about what's going on in your life. I don't know what's going on with you. I don't know how to help you. I don't know how to pray for you beyond what you're just letting me see. And so it was like we can add something else to people who've already been stretched very thin by
Yeah.
the things of church, or we can just change the way we do church altogether and make it relationship the priority.
Right.
And so that's kind of where we approached it from, and we're still learning as we go, But it's a very hands-on.
Mhm.
Dig your hands beneath the soil to get to the root to start to deal with how do we help this thing to grow.
Yeah. I'll often describe it to people, you'll hear the phrase "get out of rows and into circles."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where everyone's discussing the value of that circle driven community. And when I introduce our church and our model to people, I just say, look, we just deleted the rows.
Yeah.
We just said, hey, that's not what we do.
Yeah.
So, and so we've kind of set up here that there's a tension and a problem that exists within many Christian contexts. And that tension and problem is there isn't relational discipleship taking place.
Right.
So I know that we have done some of that within our own church, but what are some of the practical ways? Because the leader inside my head, right? If there's a third chair sitting
Yeah.
here having this conversation,
Yeah.
I would imagine that they're thinking, gosh, that sounds great. Like I'd love to be able, but I don't know if I even have time for another relationship, or how
Right.
do I even? So, what are some of the practical ways that you see yourself and you see our church living out? How to make that a reality, and how do we overcome some of those real or perceived obstacles?
Yeah. So I'll talk about the way our church is, and then I'll talk about how I've started to do this
Yeah,
on a
okay.
more personal level. But our church is structured in such a way that because now we're doing the house churches,
Mhm.
they're smaller, which means that you're going to get to know everyone in your house church. No, I always tell people can't hide in our church. And that's a good thing, but it's also intimidating for
It
a new
is.
person,
Yeah.
but even outside of that, that's where relationship comes in. So if you're inviting someone in, you've already invested in a relationship. So what we do is if you came to our house church, it looks almost like a typical church gathering. We have the same elements, except for, we spend our time praying. So we want to be devoted to prayer, as it says in Acts chapter 2. We want to be devoted to the word of God, as it says in Acts chapter 2, the apostles' teaching, and we want to be devoted to fellowship. That's the one we miss.
Mm.
And so we still have, the teaching, we still have the discussion, the prayer, the communion. We do all of that. But lunch is a vital part of what we do on Sundays, right?
yeah.
So I have people and I know this is the same in your house church as well. We have people who start off at our house at 10 o'clock and don't leave till almost 3 o'clock some Sundays. And so that's a long time to spend with each other. So it's almost like a family reunion every Sunday, except for Jesus is the center.
Yeah.
And so we have people hanging out around a table after all of the the message and all of that, just talking and hanging out for 2 hours after all of that's over. And that's a beautiful thing to watch, because now we're going beyond surface.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm hearing what's going on in your life. And there have been people who have stuck around until everybody's left to talk to me about really important issues in their life, marriage issues, sickness that's happening, asking for prayer that they don't want to make public yet. So we get to that point where we spend enough time that people are going to hang around and say, hey, I really need to talk about these things. But for the most part, it really goes beyond the surface, because we're spending so much time together, which time is, it's hard in our culture.
Yeah.
And so now on a personal level, I was telling you this earlier, but God really kind of laid on my heart, if I'm going to ask the people who I'm trying to equip to make disciples, then I have to figure out what that looks like in my life beyond the church bubble.
Right.
And so I had the opportunity to coach baseball, just to be a sports coach and spend time with young men and invest in them. And God has given me unique opportunities in that to mentor kids and to really spend time investing in them spiritually, not just, on a sports level.
Right.
And I think that's been huge, because this summer we saw a young man give his life to the Lord, which was a huge praise. After 4 seasons of me coaching baseball, I saw a young man give his life to the Lord. And so it's, making disciples. It's not, there are those, light comes on, choir of angel moments where you come to know Christ. And then there's the slow, where you just have to really invest in someone. And it's over time that you start to see them start to really understand the gospel and to see it played out in your life to where they want to give their life to it. You think about Jesus. Jesus spent, 3 years with his men? And then even then he had to die on a cross and raise again and then send his spirit. And I always remind myself, well, I'm not Jesus, and I'm not going to rise from the dead now yet. So, so I don't have, I can cut myself some slack and give myself some grace in how I invest in people. That it's not always about the numbers. It's about being faithful to being who he's called us to be.
But isn't there such a tension in that, though? Like I feel that tension, and maybe that's somebody told me this morning in a Bible study group that I'm a part of. They said, look, the most dangerous game is the comparison game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? But gosh, don't we feel that tension?
Yeah.
Where we sit there and I'll devalue that hard conversation I get to have with Jesse over the grill. We're cooking at the end of house church, right?
Yeah.
And he's got some stuff going on, and we really need to have this hard conversation. I'll unintentionally devalue that while thinking that 40 extra people at the church on a Sunday was the better thing.
Yeah.
Right. Well, how do you overcome that? Like what do you do to combat that?
It's taken me years.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to kind of get caught up in how we do things. As a youth pastor, I got the opportunity at times to speak at large camps and stuff, and I got used to the invitation culture, where you do this really dramatic, emotional invitation at the end of your message, and you get kids to come forward and raise their hands. And after a while, I thought to myself, I'm pretty good at manipulating kids to coming forward.
Yeah.
Like if I wanted to, and I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying this because it really hurt my heart after a while. I could get every kid to come forward if I wanted to. Just take the time and just play on the emotions. It felt very manipulative to me. It didn't feel real.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that no kid gave his life to Christ in those moments. I'm just saying it just felt forced and it didn't feel natural or whatever. And so I really, a lot of that has changed. So I started thinking about, what about, we're seeing people come forward. I remember going to a church a few years ago, and this pastor comes in. It was a big, big deal, him coming into the building even. And he sets this stack of blue cards on the podium. He slams them down. He's like, we saw 800 people come to faith in Christ this weekend. And I looked around, I was like, but where are they?
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to criticize. My thought was, who's discipling those people?
Right.
Because it goes beyond the raised hand.
Right.
And so there was already that angst in me about the way we do things in that sense, because that's not discipleship.
Well, and it speaks to the value of that tangible authenticity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And to to not see evangelism as separate from discipleship, but the initiation of that process,
Yeah.
that has to be continued, right?
Yeah.
Like it needs longevity. It needs,
Yeah.
the science part of my brain says it needs longitudinal data, right? Like
Yeah.
I
I don't
need,
know anything about that.
I need to see it over time, to see that authentically
Yeah.
develop in a person's life. So as I'm kind of reflecting on this, I've got to have the authenticity, got to have the time, but doesn't that authenticity lead to my heart feeling like mourning with them as they mourn,
Yeah, absolutely.
or feeling that weight? How do you have enough emotional energy to do that, man? Like that's exhausting.
I mean, it comes from the Lord only
Mm,
because it is exhausting.
Yeah.
I was talking to you earlier, since we did house church, there have been times when I've been in ministry situations that I've never been in before. And I've been in ministry almost 30 years now.
Mm.
And so sitting in a living room as a marriage is breaking apart.
Yeah.
Not in a counseling situation, in a situation where the wife is asking her husband to leave the house. That's awkward.
Yeah.
But that's part of, getting your hands dirty beneath the soil.
Right.
It's like, shouldn't we be there for those kind of conversations?
Right.
Shouldn't we be there to pray?
Right.
And shouldn't we be there to encourage? And shouldn't we be there to speak truth and life over that situation? Whereas in the past, I wouldn't even have been a part of that conversation unless they made an appointment to come see me for counseling.
Right.
But even then, the conversation changes. It's not as raw as that moment was.
Right.
And so I think if we're being relational in the way that God wants us to be relational, we're going to be present for those moments. So present where marriages are breaking apart, and we're there to help minister. When loved ones are sick or dying and people are really mourning, and we're there to put the pieces back together, not just in the hospital where you get that call that so-and-so passed away,
Right.
but hey man, my wife has been in the hospital for 3 months. Are we there in the hospital? Are we there ministering to that family those 3 months, and not just there at the end? There's something to be said about, again, that the empathetic. I'm walking in their shoes. I'm walking this out with them. I'm not just hearing about it, later on or whatever. And I think that's important. It's painful and it's hard and it is emotionally taxing, and it does leave you at times like, oh gosh, I don't know how to do that. But again, His strength is made perfect in our weakness. And so I'm going to keep pushing forward because that's what discipleship looks like.
I think that's so good, because it's a reminder that if I'm going to be an effective leader, and follower of Christ, right, irrespective of the leadership context, but particularly as we're talking in this moment, right, it's going to require an abiding intimacy with the Lord that allows me to live in an authentic way with those who are hurting when they are hurting, so that I can be in that journey with them.
Yeah.
And the other part of my brain, it just triggered, well, there's surely somebody listening to this who thinks to themselves, that's great when you've got 20 people in your house, but how do I do that for 2,000 people? I got 2,000 people. Tommy, how on earth am I supposed to do that for 2,000 people? What would be maybe your word of encouragement or something that you might offer them? And I've got some thoughts of my own too. But
what's crazy is right when we started this journey, I sat down with a pastor, a friend of mine, who was running around 2,000 people. And me and this man have been friends for a long time. And we're always kind of simpatico. Like we're always thinking the same thing around the same time, like God's laying something in our heart. We're thinking about this topic of discipleship and what it looks like to really radically be who God's called us to be in making disciples. And it felt like we were on the same page. And I remember saying to him, it's funny that you even used the number 2,000. I said, I don't know how to do that for 2,000 people. Like in my context, I can just start over.
Sure.
But I told him, I said, if you go down this journey, you can expect a lot of people to walk away.
Yeah. Because
we built this big consumer model of church where people just come and again, they hide out and they get what they need and they leave. And there's this principle called the 80-20 principle, right? So 20% of the people are giving and leading and doing all these things, and 80% of the people are just attending, right? Well, what happens when you're just left with the 20, right? Well, it feels like a failure in our culture, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I've lost 80% of my church. But you know what changed my heart on that is that Jesus regularly said difficult things and the masses walked away from him.
Mm.
So if we looked at Jesus in our culture, we'd say, well, he's a failed church planner. Like he doesn't know he doesn't know what he's doing,
Right.
right? Because people are constantly walking away, and he'd be left with the 12. And he even asked the 12, "Are you going to leave too?" And I love Simon Peter. Simon Peter was like, "Now, where else are we going to go?"
Right.
And those are the disciples,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we even know one of them was not destined to
Right.
stay, but
Right.
within that, he always held on to the 12. So our measure of success has to change.
Mm.
You know, I tell young guys who come up to me all the time, they're like, how do I know I'm called into ministry? And my response has always been, well, if like Jeremiah, you could preach 40 years and nobody ever listened to a word you say,
Yeah.
then you know you're called.
Mm.
And not even realizing that might even be my journey.
Yeah.
Like that I may never be destined to lead large masses of people to Christ or see, you know, but again, we have to change the metric of what success looks like in the eyes of the Lord. It's obedience, it's faithfulness, right? Am I faithful to making disciples, even if it's only that one kid on the
Right.
baseball team
Right.
in 4 years that
Mm-hmm.
places his faith in Jesus? I could have given up. I could have been like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore because it's not fruitful and I'm not seeing the numbers. But God's like, you hold on one more season. And, you know, I think about if I didn't hold on one more season, that one kid may not
Right.
have placed his faith in Jesus. And so again, our idea of what success looks like has to change even, and I don't know if this sounds encouraging or not. You said encourage them, even if it means the 80% walk away and you're left with the 20.
Well, I think it's, you know, if you're that pastor out there and you're thinking that way, my encouragement to you would be somewhat similar, recognizing, hey, that 20% is that's really who I'm making in, like, that's really who I'm investing and discipling.
Right.
Right. These others are like the crowd that was looking on.
Yeah.
Right. But this is where that deeper discipleship is taking place. And we know that, you know, these are often the individuals that God is putting into leadership roles to be his hands and feet.
Right.
Right. You know, we've been reading through Ephesians, and the beauty at the end of Ephesians is like the church is the fullness of him. And I had just been ruminating with that over and over again, thinking, man, what an incredible and beautiful thought and statement that we, his gathered body, right, are the fullness of him right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you're a pastor or leader out there and you're trying to figure out what that discipleship looks like, let me encourage you that one of the ways that it can look is deep investment in those individuals that are leading, that are engaging, and helping them to equally be in an abiding, intimate relationship with God, helping them to identify who it is that they can start that discipleship journey with. And by discipleship journey, I really just mean walking in life with those people, and giving or creating the space in their life to say, no, this is what I do. Right. You know, I love it because Sundays, I'm just going to have 20 people in the house. Yeah. And I'm going to be spending time with them. And there's no pretense. There's no pageantry or promotion or play. It's just walking in life together.
And that's more functional. So, you know, I've never been a pastor of a 2,000 member church, but I will tell you, when you get to about 150, I no longer can care for 150 people adequately myself. And so people do get upset. They're like, hey, you didn't call me when I've been gone out of the church for 3 weeks. So it takes me 3 weeks to notice when somebody's missing in that context. Because after a couple of weeks, like, oh, I haven't seen them in a while, you know? And so people get angry at that stuff. So I started thinking, that's not sustainable for me to adequately care for 150 people. And so when we switch to the way we do church now I have to invest in my leaders, which is you and some of the other guys, right? I have to invest in my house church now. So I do pastoral care for about 20 people. And then the elders and their families. So you're talking about 30 people total and their families, you know. That's a lot more sustainable than me trying to be over all of it. And it's kind of the system we've created in our culture, right? Where we let the professionals do all of that stuff. And it takes away, we're not equipping people for the work of ministry, and it takes away from what God's called them to be and called them to. That's not discipleship. That's called attendance. That's it. And so I want to equip our people so that when we have a need within our church, it doesn't go through our benevolence coordinator or whatever,
Mhm.
where they goes to somebody and they call and then they make some calls, or we have a fund set up. It's like, no. Your house church family is going to take care of your need.
Right.
Just let them know what's going on. Your house church pastor is going to counsel you and care for you. And it's not saying that I'm hands off. I mean, I've been pastoring some of these people for upwards of 12 years now.
Right,
And
right.
so I'm going to get involved every once in a while as the lead pastor of the church, but I don't feel the pull to do that. And it's crazy. The further we get along, the less people actually reach out for me to do those things. Right. And so I trust our leaders to do it, but it's not just about the elders and the leaders, because they're not even the professional pastors.
Right.
They're lay leaders as well. Is that I trust the people in our house churches to be the church,
That's
be the
right.
hands and feet of Jesus, and come alongside people in their time of need. So pastoral care doesn't even just happen from the top down. It happens side by side,
Right.
which is how it should happen.
Well, we were just talking about, there was a message recently, and I was just so thankful as we were sitting all discussing the scriptures. I wasn't the one, like, I'm a house church pastor, right? I lead those discussions, and I play the bumper to make sure we don't get heretical and, kind of keep it all together. Yeah. But they were discipling each other. Mm-hmm. I was able to just sit there for a moment and allow other people to speak into each other's lives. And, I know that that's the context for some small groups and some things like that. And but it just speaks to the intentionality of creating, again, those primary elements. We're going to have deep relationship so that we can have deep discipleship.
Yeah.
We're going to have deep intimacy so we can have genuine authenticity in our attitudes and actions. Yeah. And we're going to abide in the Father in such a way that we're able to walk that discipleship journey with people. Right. Well, Tommy, any kind of closing thoughts as we, kind of wrap out this discussion on discipleship and leadership?
Yeah, I was just thinking really quickly. One of the things that when we switched to the way we do church now, one of the things that I got from a lot of our people who were making the switch with us, who have been in church for a long time, is how are we going to reach people now, right? And I remember having a discussion with Jesse Cooper. Yeah, and Jesse Cooper was like, Tommy, I just don't see how we're going to make this work. Like, how are we going to grow? How are people going to know where we're at? And I said, well, Jesse, you're going to do what the Bible says, and you're going to make disciples.
That's right.
And so that's where we are as a church right now, is that now that we are helping people to grow in their faith, part of that growth comes from actually you going and doing now. So it's not about sitting and learning until glory, until Jesus comes back, right? It's about, okay, one of the ways that you experience the fullness of the goodness of God in your life is by actually going and making disciples. Right. Paul says in Philemon 6, he says, I pray that you may be active in sharing your faith so that you'll have a full understanding of every good thing that comes from God. Amen. Right? So the way that we have a full understanding of the goodness of God and experience the joy of the fruit that he's promised us is actually in being active in sharing our faith. And so, we've, in the past, we've left that to the pastors and leaders to do. That's a job for the professionals. But we have to, as a church in our culture, figure out a way to make that a part of day one of your discipleship journey, is that, hey, now you got to go tell people. And so that's where we're at as a church right now. And that's a struggle because we're trying to, I hate using the word deprogram because it just sounds like cult language or whatever. But we have to almost deprogram people from that mentality of I'm just a consumer who comes and sits and I'm served. I don't invest in this way. No, from day one, we want you investing and we're going to show you how to do it. And so as leaders, we have to be the example of that in our lives. And we have to be able to point to, hey, here's what I'm doing, which I think in the past I would have just pointed to the pulpit and said, that's what I'm doing, and that's not a really good model to follow. And so as maturing disciples, we have to be willing to go and make disciples.
That's right.
And in doing so, I think that, we're helping others along on their spiritual journey as well.
Tommy, thank you so much, man. Thanks for obviously being my pastor and all the incredible things you do in that role. Pleasure. But thanks for taking some time to sit down and talk through this with us. Yeah. If you're a leader that's out there listening to this, I just want to encourage you, man, there are processes and plans and steps that you can take, but it all begins with that intimate relationship with Jesus yourself and in living in that abiding place. And we want to help serve you in that regard. You can find resources at iliteam.org. Find some different YouVersion Bible reading plans or just things that can help you in that discipleship journey yourself or along with someone else. But if this or some of these others have been of use to you, I just want to encourage you, like, subscribe, do all the things you need to do there. Maybe share with a friend if you find this helpful, and give us some feedback. You can send us an email. Just go to iliteam.org and you can do some different things there. But we'd love to hear from you so we can understand and serve you better, because genuinely, when the leader gets better, everybody wins. And we need more Christian leaders faithfully living out their calling and making disciples in all aspects. So, Tommy, thanks again for spending some time with us, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.